5 strange things that actually make sense. Why do people in Japan send noodles down a stream of water? Why is meat cooked inside a giant underground pit in Oman? And how can a basketball work without air? These things may look strange at first, but each one has a surprisingly practical explanation. Let's take a closer look. 1. Why do noodles float down water in Japan? In Japan, there's a traditional way of serving noodles called nagashi somen. Cold noodles are placed into a stream of clean water flowing through a long bamboo chute. People stand on both sides and use chopsticks to catch the noodles as they pass by. So why serve noodles this way? It's not really about making the noodles easier to cook. It's about turning a simple meal into an interactive experience. The flowing water also keeps the noodles cold while carrying them directly to the people eating. So the water basically works as both a cooling system and a natural conveyor belt. 2. Why does Oman cook meat inside a giant pit? In Oman and other parts of the Arabian Peninsula, traditional cooking sometimes involves placing meat inside a large underground pit. First, the pit is heated with hot stones or charcoal. The meat is then placed inside, sometimes suspended above the heat, and the pit is covered. Because the heat is trapped underground, the meat can cook slowly for several hours. This slow cooking helps break down tough connective tissues, making the meat extremely tender. The covered pit also helps retain heat and moisture. By the time the meat is ready, it can become so tender that it easily falls away from the bone. 3. How are sponges made? A simple household sponge looks almost effortless to make, but its entire structure is designed around one important feature: tiny, interconnected pores. During manufacturing, polymer materials are mixed and processed in a way that creates countless small air pockets. Once the material hardens, those empty spaces remain inside the sponge. When you squeeze it, water and air are pushed out. When you release it, the sponge expands again and pulls liquid back into those pores. That is why a sponge can absorb a surprising amount of water despite being so lightweight. Its secret isn't the material alone. It's the enormous number of tiny spaces hidden inside. 4. Why is butter washed with water in Turkey? When traditional butter is made, milk fat has to be separated from the other components of milk. But small amounts of buttermilk and milk solids can remain trapped inside the butter, so the butter can be washed with cold water and worked repeatedly. The water helps remove those leftover milk components. The butter is then gathered back together while excess water is removed. This produces a cleaner butter and can also help improve its storage properties. So the water isn't being added to the butter, it's actually being used to wash unwanted milk residues away. 5. How can a new basketball work without air? A traditional basketball depends on air pressure. The air inside the ball helps it keep its shape and bounce when it hits the floor. But newer airless basketball designs use a different approach. Instead of relying on a traditional air-filled bladder, they use a specially engineered elastic structure inside the ball. This structure helps the ball maintain its shape and provides the spring needed for bouncing. That means you don't have to constantly check the air pressure or worry about a puncture making the ball unusable. It's a completely different approach to solving the same problem. Instead of using compressed air to create the bounce, the material and internal structure do the job. Conclusion: from noodles floating through water, to meat cooked underground, to a basketball that doesn't need air, these things may seem unusual, but once you understand the technology and traditions behind them, they start to make perfect sense. Sometimes the strangest ideas are simply clever solutions to everyday problems.